It's been 6 months since the Astroworld Festival crowd crash disaster resulted in hundreds of injuries and 10 deaths. Although it feels like time has gone by quickly, it hasn't even been a full year since this happened, and Travis Scott hasn't suffered many consequences, if any at all, especially since he just gave a public performance to a sold-out crowd in Miami. A disaster like this was in the making from the start and was going to happen eventually at one of Travis's concerts. We just want to know when. Travis Scott's journey to fame would begin with sending a cold email containing sample tracks to a music manager. He was then offered a production gig to work on some Kanye West and Jay-Z pieces while simultaneously working on building up his own solo career. Between 2015 and 2016, he released 2 albums, both of which peaking on the top of Billboard charts and going platinum. And to this day, he has 7 songs that have reached the Billboard Global 200. While touring early in his career pre-2017, his concert attendance would average around 1,425 per show, with tickets selling at about 80% capacity. Then in fall of 2018, he'd kick off his Astroworld Wish You Were Here tour that would last until the following summer, with an average attendance of 14,671 per show and sellout percentage being over 98%. This tour would earn Travis the #1 ranking on the Top 100 Tours chart in 2019 in the first quarter of the year, beating out other top performers such as Justin Timberlake and Metallica. These attendance numbers would continue to rise in the following years as Travis's music career blew up. Of course, people were into the music and entertaining performer that Travis Scott is, but they were also probably attracted to the chaotic atmosphere that comes from attending his performances. Travis Scott shows have a reputation for raging manic mosh pits. He said that he wants his concerts to feel like high-energy wrestling matches, encouraging the crowd to match his energy levels on stage, including jumping, dancing, or the forming of many mosh pits within the crowds. And I'm not gonna lie, they'd be pretty fun for me too if I wasn't claustrophobic or had a hatred for being sandwiched between way too many people. To each their own, no judgment if you're into that kind of thing. It's actually common for a ton of music performances and shows to have mosh pits with a raging, chaotic atmosphere. However, in recent times, it's only mainly Travis Scott's that have made the headlines. During a 2015 Lollapalooza performance, Travis was performing a song and subsequently told his fans to climb over security barricades.
Yo! Stop fucking touching these razors, man! Don't fucking touch them! Honestly, Danny, back the fuck up!
No one was injured, thankfully, and for some reason he fled the scene and was taken into custody, pleading guilty to misdemeanor reckless conduct, being sentenced to 1 year of court supervision.
Second-story balcony. That fan was luckily okay, but another fan says that he was pushed off and was ultimately paralyzed at that show.
Again in 2017, he'd be arrested for another concert-related incident in Arkansas for encouraging people to rush the stage and bypass security. This time, however, people did get injured. Travis was charged with inciting a riot, disorderly conduct, and endangering the welfare of a minor. 2 of the charges would be dismissed in 2018, with Travis pleading guilty to disorderly conduct and paying over $6,800 to 2 people who said they were injured at his show. Also in 2017, another fan will file a lawsuit against Travis and the concert security services after saying that he was left partially paralyzed at a concert after being caused to fall over a balcony. He described that he was moved by security guards without proper safety precautions. Unfortunately, it would only be a matter of time for one of these performances to lead to more injuries and even worse, death. Fast forward to November 5th, 2021, the Astroworld tragedy. Held in Houston, Texas, the Astroworld Music Festival had about 50,000 people in attendance to watch Travis Scott close out the first day. As the night would go on, however, a large portion of the crowd would surge towards the stage, with hundreds being injured and 10 deaths, some of which including children. It was determined by Houston's medical examiner's office that the main cause of death for victims was compression asphyxia, with all deaths being ruled accidental. Compression asphyxia means that there is an external force that is limiting the ability of the chest to expand and for air to get into the lungs. Basically, the night was filled with people trampling others, pushing against each other, and people literally drowning in a sea of people even if they couldn't help it. A concert attendee would go on to say, "You can literally jump in the air and you're there in the air. It's like if your hands are up, your hands are staying up." Fans would scream for help, with some even climbing on stage with an attempt to stop the show. But the show would continue on anyways, up until the concert concert ended roughly 30 minutes early than was planned, and authorities arriving on the scene. It is proclaimed as being one of the deadliest crowd control disasters at a concert in the United States since 1979. Concert goers would share experiences, saying that the event was hectic from the beginning. A huge crowd would rush and push their way through entrance gates, leading to many being trampled. Fights were also breaking out throughout the day, and it seemed to be a mob mentality of people willing to do whatever to get what they wanted when it came to getting merch, food, or watching the shows. And after all of this, even 6 months later, it feels like Travis hasn't really taken responsibility for what happened.
I just want to send out prayers to the ones that was lost last night. We're actually working right now to identify the families so we can help assist them through this tough time. You know, my fans really mean the world to me, and I always just really want to leave them with a positive experience. And anytime I can make out, anything that's going on, I stop the show and, help them get the help they need, I could just never imagine the severity of the situation.
The most common argument amongst his fans will be, but how could he know? He was performing, he couldn't hear anybody. He checked on people and saw the ambulance in the crowd. Although that's true, he was performing and briefly paused the show to make sure people were okay because he saw the ambulance. Did he ever account for the people screaming for help? Not everybody was as okay as he thought, and if there's an ambulance at a concert, that's a pretty big sign for trouble. Did he bother to check in with security to see if other pockets of people were okay, not just the ones in front of him? And lastly, did he account for the fact that the ambulance could barely move because his fans were dancing on it on its way to actually helping people in need? There are a ton of examples of artists stopping shows to make sure that fans get the help they actually need, no matter how long it takes. They make sure that the EMTs or whoever is needed gets to that fan and that the fan is taken care of, and the show goes on. Travis would go on to say that he was completely unaware of the situation and didn't know people had been injured or dead until after he left the stage. Days after, Travis Scott would be hit with hundreds of lawsuits, with many claiming that they had been injured mentally, physically, and psychologically after the festival. Attorney Brent Kuhn, who's representing roughly 2,000 concert goers, has asked for about $10 billion in damages. Travis's attorneys filed his first response to lawsuits in December, denying the allegations against him and asking that the cases be dismissed. Travis did some damage control as well, including offering to pay for funeral services to those who had died, offering therapy and mental health services, and creating a public apology on Instagram.
I mean, I'm honestly just devastated, and I could never imagine anything like this just happening. I'm gonna do everything I can to keep you guys updated and just keep you guys informed on what's going on.
As of 2022, Travis is still facing an entire lawsuit made up of hundreds of individually filed cases from victims, with billions of dollars in damages being requested. Not to mention that a criminal investigation into this disaster is still ongoing. Given the amount of overlapping cases, it makes sense that there needs to be a level of organization and efficiency before these cases can be presented in front of a single judge. Beyond this, a documentary on the event called Concert Crush would be released, reconstructing the night's events from phone footage and detailed interviews with survivors. This, of course, would result in Travis Scott and those representing him to get upset, with his reps heading back by describing it as a farce financed by and containing content from members of the plaintiffs' legal teams who, weeks after a tragedy, sought to exploit and benefit financially from it, with the clear goals of making money and swaying future juries and public opinion. It would be this month, May of this year, when Travis would perform the first time since the Astroworld Festival to a sold-out crowd. So I guess you could say that he's unbothered and living his life as if everything's normal, as any rich and famous person would. I know that terrible accidents and disasters can take place, with it not always being the artist's fault. However, this is different given the signs to stop this tragedy from happening were there. There was chaos from the beginning, terrible infrastructure layout for such a large crowd that wasn't accounted for, and an obviously terrible security issue that seems to always be a problem at his shows. If a club owner had a similar event in which they had a packed house, people are passing out, screaming for help, and dying, and clearly ignoring the signs with terrible security, you can guarantee that they would be in jail and drowning in lawsuits that would leave them broke afterwards. Given Travis Scott's financial and famous status, however, it's pretty easy for someone like him to get away with something like this, as most do, unfortunately. He won't face any jail time, I'm sure, and will probably just pay a hefty settlement to victims. We'll just have to see what happens. I'm curious to see what future Travis Scott concerts and performances look like given his reputation, the recent Astroworld tragedy, and a dedicated fan base that probably still loves to rage.
Louder!